you, so just keep breathing. I'm already tall enough. I don't stand up there. And because occasionally I want to talk to one of you, and I might actually come this way, and I don't want you to be intimidated if I come over here. It's just how I move and how I talk. So, as you were just reminded, I don't need the order of service anymore. There are many hallways. Which hallways do you remember from last week? Okay, sure. Temporary hallways, that's one of them. If I had my pen out, I'd check them off as we went. What other kind of hallway can you have? Group hallways. We talked about that one last, didn't we? And what other hallways? Inner hallways, permanent hallways. Good job. Yes, endless hallways, yes. So it's a hallway that may go on for weeks, months, years. It's a long hallway. And how do you get in the hallway? And sometimes you open the door. Sometimes it slams on you. Sometimes it's a really quick hallway. All of a sudden you're in a hallway. You got up this morning and life was fine. And on your way to what you thought was church, somebody rammed into the side of your car. Instant hallway. And sometimes it's a hallway that's very slow in unfolding. You watch it unfold in your life. You see that change is coming. I will retire. Somebody talked to me about retiring. Mark talked to me about retiring this morning. And he knows it's coming, but he's still in the hallway called, I'm going to retire. And so that's a hallway of change. And the group hallways, just to remind you, are the ones where it's happening to everyone. For example, it could be a national disaster. It could be a fire. It could be, like the fires we have in the mountains. So there are hallways that happen to a large group of people, not just to one individual, and yet you're in that hallway and you're part of it. And we're working with the book. Do you have a book cover back there for me?
Your presentation crashed.
My presentation crashed. Of course it did. So the title of the book is Hell in the Hallway, Light at the Door. And the title of my series is If You're in Hell, Keep Walking. Because we either keep walking or we surrender to the hallway, we surrender to hell, and we stay there. And how long do you have to stay in that hallway? As long as it takes. And what's that metaphysical number?
40 years.
Oh, you guys are so good. All right. Because I used to teach school, so I just give these little pop quizzes from time to time, just to make sure you were paying attention. And while you're in the hallway, what are you supposed to do with your feelings? Feel them, express them, acknowledge, I'm feeling sad, mad, happy, glad, angry, depressed, whatever you're feeling. Are you your feelings? No. So even though that's how you're feeling, and I'm going to acknowledge that I feel frustrated, I feel afraid, I feel angry, you have to let I need 3 hands, a little tiny piece of your brain that remembers that you're not your feelings. So your feelings are what happen. They're part of our human condition, but they're not who you are. And when we get in trouble in life is when we believe that our feelings are all that there is. I just had one of my ministerial colleagues who is in Florida, And her daughter was in a relationship with a man for a very long time, and she has a daughter and he had a son, and that son, who was 18 years old, just committed suicide. Now, we all know that there were feelings of depression that were accompanying that act on his part. But he couldn't remember that he wasn't his feelings. It's why it's important to remember that we're not our feelings. We are not that experience. It's something we have. It's like I'm wearing a polka dot shirt this morning. I am not a polka dot shirt, but I am wearing one. That's what your feelings are like. There's something we experience, there's something that we have, but remembering that we're not our feelings is a really, really, really important part of the journey. So that's kind of what we did last week. On to this week. What are we going to do now that we're in this hallway? And as somebody mentioned earlier, you can be in many hallways at the same time. So you might be in a long-term hallway, you might be in a group hallway, and some, shall we say, catastrophe may have happened to you at the same time. So you can be in many hallways. But the blessing of being a part of Unity is that we offer you the opportunity to think. We offer you an opportunity to make choices and to realize that every single moment of every single day, you are making choices. And you can be conscious of the fact you're making choices, or you can be unconscious. I'd love to tell you that, okay, you heard me say that, now you know it, you're good for life. That has not been the case in my life. So I know that I'm making choices. I know that those choices that I make in this moment today will affect my future. And sometimes I can be awake in the midst of that choice, but often I'm asleep. I'm not paying attention. I am making unconscious choices. And so our choices always are the choices that I make in this moment conscious, or are they unconscious choices? When we arrive in a hallway, it's frequently a very, very, very traumatic experience. It doesn't matter which one it is. And we have all kinds of feelings that accompany arriving in this hallway. And it's exhausting. Frequently, having the strength to get out of bed is a big deal if you're in a really serious hallway. So what do you do when you wake up in the morning? You know, you've got one eye. You don't want to get out of bed, do you? Not when you're in one of those hallways. You kind of just want to lay there and feel sorry for yourself. So what's your first opportunity? You've got to sit up. I don't recommend getting out of bed if you haven't sat up first. It's called falling on the floor. You will not appreciate that experience when you're down there. So you've got to sit up. Do you see, even that activity requires a conscious choice. You have to choose to sit up. Once you've sat up, you have to choose to stand up. And then you have to choose to take a step. And in those three actions, you have chosen to begin your day. You have chosen to begin living this experience. So when you're in a hallway with all the accompanying stress, with all the accompanying feelings, sometimes There are direct actions that you have to take. Let's say you were in an automobile crash. All right, you've got to get an insurance estimate for your car. You've got to get a replacement. You've got to get a rental car. You see, there are things that you have to do, assuming that you aren't in the hospital. Do you see what I mean? If you're in the hospital, you have to deal with that. If someone dies, you have to call. You have to arrange a funeral. You have to arrange all the details. You have to make calls to all the people who cared about this person. Sometimes there are things that you have to do. And most of us in any hallway experience find the strength to take those physical steps, to deal with whatever it is that needs to be dealt with in that moment. Once those details have ended, the real hallway frequently begins. Because those details of taking care of circumstances are really an avoidance. You're avoiding feeling your feelings. So know that with a hallway, you have to take some time to sit down, lay down, contemplate, be with, and feel the feelings. You don't have to hang out there forever. Remember, Psalm says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That assumes you're going to keep walking. That's what the title of my series is about. We're going to keep walking. But pausing and doing what we do every time we pause. Take a deep breath. Go within. God, I am so sad. I am heartbroken. I am devastated. I am angry. Now, one of the things that frequently comes to us in that moment is that we feel like a victim. Am I right? Guess what? Unity doesn't allow anyone to choose to be a victim. See, we believe that we create our world with our thoughts. So, if we're creating our world with our thoughts, somewhere, again, in some piece of your brain, maybe not the front of it, right up here, that may not be your first thought, but somewhere in your brain, you get to look at, I surely did not want this experience. There's not one part of me that wanted this experience. How did I create this experience? That's a really hard one for people. And I want to tell you one thing right now. If you're with some friend of yours, if you're with some congregant, and something tragic has happened in their life, do not walk into their room and say, how did you create this? I personally will come and find you and beat you up. Don't do that. We don't do metaphysical guilt. And unfortunately, that has been something that some Unity people have done over the years. I'm sure none of you have. But do you see that this is a personal spiritual journey? It is not for you to ask me, how did you create that? But it is for me, in the privacy of my own meditation experience, to go, gee whiz, how did I create this? So there's a couple of examples I would like to sort of share with you in terms of talking about how do we create this. I recently saw the movie Chappaquiddick. Did any of you guys see that? No. Do you remember Chappaquiddick? Does that name bring something to your mind? So in the movie Chappaquiddick, so this is in my mind because I just recently saw that movie with my son, but we all know that Ted Kennedy drove off a bridge and Mary Jo Kopechne died. We know that he did not immediately report it. He did not go to the authorities until the next morning. we know that there was a lot of drama involved in that. So how did Ted Kennedy create that experience? Good time to talk to me. Pick some.
Not making movies.
Okay, he made a choice not to immediately try to get her out to save her. How about what created the experience itself? Surely some of you remember. They thought maybe she was having an affair, but why did he drive off a bridge? He was what? He was unable to drive correctly. And why was he unable to drive correctly? Come on. We got it back in the corner. He'd been drinking. So, again, I'm not going to ask you for a show of hands. How many times have you driven drunk? I'm pretty sure if you drink that you have had more than 1.3 drinks that you're allowed to drink in a bar and still be legal if the police stops you. So we know he far exceeded that amount. So he made a choice. Do you see that he chose to drink more than he should have? He chose to go off with a woman even though he was married. Do you see the choices that are going on there? So sometimes that's what happens to us along the way. Now, he didn't choose consciously to have an accident, drive off the bridge, and kill this woman. Of course, he didn't choose that, but he chose the circumstances that resulted in that action. I'll give you a different example. My big brother, man that I adored, smoked from the time he was 14. At one point in time, I know he was smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Now, my brother was not a dumb man, and as all the stuff came out, he quit smoking. He had absolutely fine pink lungs. However, when he smoked, he always was drinking something. Coffee, a Coke, a beer. Smoke, drink, smoke, drink, smoke, drink. When you do that, the nicotine goes straight to your bladder. Nothing cleans the nicotine out of your bladder. My brother died of bladder cancer. 20 years after he quit smoking, he died of bladder cancer. But do you see, you can't say that he didn't choose that experience. Now, not consciously. He never once said, I would like to die of bladder cancer because I'm going to drink and smoke at the same time. But when we're not conscious in our life, when we're not making choices based on our highest and best, based on the ways that we know to be healthy. You know, the wonderful thing about the 5th principle of unity is that you have to live the truth that you know. The terrible thing about the 5th principle of unity is you have to live the truth that you know. Now, is this the first time you've ever been in unity? Doesn't make any difference. I don't care if you only know this much truth. Are you living it? Unity is not going to come along and say, this is wrong and this is right. We don't do that. We don't have any judgment. We don't do sin, hell, guilt in that way. But we know that you're creating your life with every choice. So what we try to do is help you become conscious of the choices you make. That's all. No judgment. You know, there's a discernment involved, you know. But the question is, once this event happens, once the door's opened, slammed, you're in a hallway. The question now becomes, what are you going to do in this hallway? That's the place where you get to choose not to be a victim. There's a wonderful book and work that goes with it by a woman named Byron Katie. It's called Loving What Is, and that's the title of my talk today. You're called, offered the opportunity, not forced, to love what is. So, how do you love what is when you're in a big pile of caca? How do you find the blessing? There's not a universal rule for that. But there is an opportunity to reflect and to notice, how did I get here? The word you asked doesn't begin with why. You are here. You are in the hallway. But how did I get here, and what am I going to do now that I'm here? Do you see, all of a sudden now you have new choices. All of a sudden now you are empowered. You are powerful. You're the person who's making choices that will affect your life based on the hallway. So if we went back to Ted Kennedy for a moment, we don't know what he discerned in the hallway. But we do know that he went from being just a playboy, and he came from a long line of playboys and inherited it well. But he made a conscious choice to make a difference in the world. He made a conscious choice to serve people. And much of that reflection came from him, his owning up to his own responsibility and choosing to go forward from there. Do you see how that's like, I woke up, I sat up, I stood up, and I took a step? When we notice where we are, when we notice that we're in this hallway, it's the beginning of the rest of your life. Now, I know that phrase is a cliche, but I have great news for you. I don't think there's a cliche out there that's not true. That's how they got to be a cliche. I don't care if it's a stitch in time saves 9. You know, if you mend that one little hole in the side of your jeans, it's not going to turn into a gaping hole. So cliches are true. So, what is yours to learn? So my son, Jeffrey, got a DUI a few years ago. And he ended up in jail. He was in jail for the night. He had a year of going to counseling. It cost him $6,000 to pay all the attendant expenses, pay for the counseling, all the things. He did his 60 hours of community service, and he wrote a book. Not because I told him to write a book, but because he was trying to figure out, how did I get here? Now, Jeff grew up in Unity. As I told someone before church, he had 32 YOU t-shirts from going to Regi and Bi-Regi and conference and all the different things. So it's not like he doesn't know, but gee whiz, he wasn't making choices from what he knew. He was making unconscious young men choices that young men make. He didn't, you could actually buy the book on Amazon, and I'm not particularly selling Jeffrey's books, and I'm not even telling you that it's a great book, but it's Jeffrey reflecting on his process of how did I get here? So you may not want to write a book, but you may want to journal. You may want to think about, how did I get here? What choices did I make? How could I have chosen differently? How could I have avoided this hallway? So that's the hallways you can avoid. They're the hallways you can't avoid. How do you love what is in a hallway you can't avoid? Last week I talked about my niece whose husband just died. She's in a hallway. She is miserable. She is grieving. Now, she cannot change her husband's death, but she can change how she relates to her husband's death. See, any circumstance gives you something that you can choose. When we talk in unity, we talk about our 12 powers, the 12 innate gifts from God that we have, our 12 resources that everyone's born with. No one missed them. And strength, power, courage, all of those things are those powers. And so how do we apply wisdom, love? Is it the power of elimination? What do we need to get rid of? And sometimes what we have to get rid of is a behavior trait. Some of us what we have to get rid of is the way we respond to circumstances. But there's always a choice that we can make. How do we love what is? So, I have tickets to Sheryl Crow at Hudson Gardens tonight. Now, what's going to happen this afternoon? It's going to rain. Maybe. And it's going to rain a lot, and there's going to be a lot of wind. I can't change that event. I can't change when it's happening. I can't change the weather. And I can choose to be miserable, or I can choose to have the very best experience that I can. I've heard tell that the show goes on. So I can put on rain gear. I can sit and listen. My hair will be much curlier at the end of the day because I straighten my hair so that I look glamorous for you. But you see, even on things that I can't control the weather. I can love what is. It applies to our hallways. You know, going to a Sheryl Crow concert is not a very big hallway. It's okay. I mean, the world would not end if I didn't even get to go. But it's my choice. How I respond to the circumstances in my life is my choice. Now, unity is a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. And as individuals who call ourselves part of the Christian tradition, part of that tradition is surrender. Now, that's a word frequently people don't like much. I don't want to surrender. Please know that spiritual surrender is not about waving a white flag. Spiritual surrender is about accepting what is happening in your life. If you can change it, sit up, stand up, take a step, and go change it. Whatever it is. If you can't change it, what you always have is the power of how you respond to that circumstance. Every single event in our life, be it public, group, individual, private, secret even, where we have control, where we have power, where we have the ability to overcome whatever is happening in our life, is in accepting what is, loving what is. You may not like it. Don't hear that loving it and liking it are the same. They aren't. It's about acceptance. So I accept it, and now the question becomes, what am I going to do now? That takes you out of victim mentality and moves you into victor mentality. You can overcome, you can deal with, you can live with whatever's going on in your life if you remember who you are. You come and listen to us tell you every single Sunday morning that you are divine. You are powerful. But we can't follow you into your closet to remind you. You have to remember, I am a facet of the divine. I always have been. I always will be. There is nothing that can harm me. Now, my physical body can be dead in a second, but you can't hurt me. So if you know that you're divine, if you know that you're powerful, if you accept what is happening in your life, you can overcome it. You can overcome it. So because I don't like to hold all the things at once, I'm going to see if there was something I wanted to say that I didn't say. I could be done. Okay, what I didn't say that is at the end, so this is the perfect place, is that while we learn and grow and can transform from a place of acute pain, be it physical, mental, or spiritual. Pain isn't necessary for growth. We can use every experience of pain to create our own growth. Amen. Every bit of it. Thank you. Amen. But you don't have to be in pain to grow. Do you see, if we can accept and choose every moment of our lives, that same growth can happen irregardless of what's going on in our life. So, I simply invite you to take a deep breath. And relax into your own chair. Noticing if you are holding any tension in any part of your body. Breathe into any tightness in your muscles. Choose to relax that part of your body. And just let go. This is a safe place. Everyone in this room has experienced extraordinary pain. And yet everyone in this room is in this room. So what we choose in each moment of every day is to first choose compassion for ourselves. Compassion for this journey that we've walked. Compassion for all the time that we have spent in hell. Compassion for the hallways that we've dwelt in. And if in this moment we're in a hallway, we invite you to feel both your own compassion for yourselves and each of us in this room's compassion for your hallway. What we can't do is ever fix someone else's hallway. It's impossible. And it is an immense waste of our energy to even try. But what we can do is be compassionate towards each individual on this planet. Compassionate for their journeys. Compassionate for their life experience. Compassionate for their pain, their sadness, their grief, their depression. We can listen. We can support. We can pray. But we cannot fix. So we surrender to what is in this moment. We love, but do not like what is happening. And we have the courage and wisdom to ask, how did I get in this hallway? What choices can I make? Minute by minute, day by day, one day at a time, to alleviate my own suffering and to move forward into the rest of my life. Breathing into that awareness, we simply sit with ourselves in compassion in this stillness. In the stillness of this moment, there is peace, there is calm, there is love, strength, wisdom, compassion. There is joy. And when we move from victim to victor, we can experience all of these things. And for the innate gifts that were part of our inheritance at birth, we simply say, thank you. Thank you. And so it is. Please join in singing Alleluia.